Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. I am still wearing the same clothing, even though it is going to be posted on the same on a different day. But that is okay. I am joined again to talk about more draft prospects, and today we are going to talk about some amazing ones, specifically one that has the highest upside that Coach seems to think. So I'm going to let Coach get into a certain GG Jackson, and he's going to give the bio on Gigi.
So we have a 6'9", 215-pound forward. Now, here's the key thing about him. He just turned 18 the same month when I was born. So I was born in December, so was Gigi. Um, he's the youngest player in this draft as that we know of anyway. The top prospect actually of the 2022 high school recruiting class was Gigi Jackson. He was just 16 a year and a half ago, which is kind of hard to believe right now.
Crazy.
Uh, um, this guy, I think he has tremendous upside right now. Um, they have him listed as he can play the four. I see him more as a three in the NBA, and I think he has the mobility to do so. He averaged about 15 points and 6 rebounds. The he's the type of player where if you look at the numbers, you're going to be like, not so sure. As did I actually. And then I get into the game tape a little bit, and then I read some of the reviews from people who really scout the NCAA, and they're like, high upside, tremendous. If he was to go back to school next year, and he could because he'll be 19 by the time the next year's draft comes around in 2024, he could go number one. It's a weaker draft, and he could easily be in that top, go one or top three at least. He's not going to go that in this draft, but this is a guy with, he's a hard worker. He's got great shot form. I've seen a lot of catch and shoot threes. He's able to create his own shot. The shot selection sometimes is a little questionable, but when you're 17 years old for 3 months of the season, it's not like you're playing when you're 20. So I also see high elite athleticism from him as well. Um, Something else that I've kind of read about him and noticed a bit in his video too. Guy hustles all the time. He doesn't stop. Um, he's he he's and I know that Beyond has mentioned this to me, and I had to think about it for a second, but there's a little bit of Pascal Siakam in him, but I also see a little bit of, I want to say, a bit of Paul George as well. Like he's a 6'9" wing who offensively he's crafty. I think it just comes down to him playing more. A lot of the things that he can work on is teachable. The things that he does have, it's not teachable at all. Those are some gifts that he has. The quickness, the first step, the athleticism, the size. There's a lot of things that you just can't teach. So um, I just feel like in terms of upside in this draft, he might be top three or four in terms of upside. And that's including Wembanyama and Scoot. I think he's got tremendous upside. He's a bit of a project at the same time, but if the draft is about drafting the best talent and you have the 14th or 15th pick and he's still on the board, that it's something to me that I'd want to think about if I was a GM.
Hmm, interesting.
That's very, very high praise.
Yes.
Yep.
I'll give my thoughts after Beyond. So,
Um,
what did you see when? Because Coach has been going on with this guy, and I'm like, okay, all right, I'll look into him. So I'm wondering what you saw as well.
it's hard for me. I don't want to kind of try to compare too many players in this draft together because we're doing them separately. But with
Yes.
him, I keep on comparing him with Hendricks because I think they're kind of the same type of pool of players, and I think in some ways he's a little more raw than Hendricks at the moment. But I think to the coach's point, could his upside be a little bit more? Potentially, it could be. I mean, you talked about the shot making, the preparation he has in this case for that. That's stuff that we know professionals have trouble doing that right now in the league at this point. Is for so if he's got that going and he's only 18, that's a great attribute to have already. He could be a high level. They mentioned he could be a top line defender. There's very Raptor-esque type of characteristics about him that I can see if he's on the board and there's a couple other players on the board. Let's put it this way: if there's guards on the board and he's on the board, and knowing the Raptors brass, I don't think I would want to go sell my house and say they're going to pick the guard. Let's put it that way. If Gigi's still on the board, that they can't pass up that opportunity. They say he's a very kind of manipulative ball handler, which is very good for someone of his size. You don't really see, and I think that's where the Paul George part might come into play, because Paul George has very much guard skills in that sense with his handle that a lot of guys that size don't have. And that is a separation in that sense for Siakam in this case. So I think from that standpoint, I get the Paul George part. Like if that's able to come across in the NBA, that does a world of difference in what his offensive game looks like. So, I mean, yeah, he's a fascinating prospect. I think he's one of these guys we're just talking off air. He's another guy that I think he might start creeping up a little bit more as time goes by. Because I mean, we're in the age of the big wing. And if these guys can shoot a little bit, and he looks like he can shoot a little bit, that is high priority, man. You got to go and face guys like Jason Tatum every night and deal with Siakam, and you're looking for guys to defend him in the future, or in this case, Scotty Barnes in the future. Yeah, this is what you're looking at if you're any team. So, yeah, he is a tantalizing prospect. Let's put it that way. I mean, the youth is interesting. I think he's the type of guy if you're on a team, and actually, to be fair, the Raptors might be in that space where they're obviously not contender, but yet they're not quite like a project, like, just like all developmental guys. And he could take his time a little bit. It's not necessarily a bad fit from a roster construction standpoint as well, too. Like he get time on this team and kind of build into his skill set a little bit. I prefer to have someone that can have a little more of an impact right now, but I'm not opposed to this type of selection that had to happen.
I think he's this year, and you might laugh at this, but I think he could be this year's Shaden Sharp of the draft. This untapped potential,
Stab me in the heart right now, Coach. You're
big,
really
I know, big athlete, stuff like that. And look, man, he's got. I like you. You said something earlier about Jason Tatum. I don't want to put that big of a comparison on him, but there are some similarities because he's so young. Like this guy, when he's 25, someone could have a Tatum on their hands if he developed.
Pretty young when he went the draft too.
First year, yeah, he was like 19, something like 19.
He just turned 19 or something like that. Well, yeah, like so. Yeah, I mean, who knows? But that is the type of ideal player everyone's looking for. And so, like, it's hard to pass up on that type of guy. I said before, he and Hendricks seem to be kind of like they're kind of playing for the same role if you want to think about it from an acting standpoint. It's like who's going to be the first one the two comes off the board will be fascinating as time goes on to see.
It will be. I think Hendricks has higher defensive upside just because I think he's probably a better athlete in terms of like length, like really get up and protect the rim. Jackson's not that.
Yeah,
but I think
there's a negative aspect that I'll get to later on when we get that part. But I think there's one thing that's definitely separating the two at the moment when it comes around the rim. But we'll discuss that a little later.
Yeah. I mean, so to get into, so I don't really have a comparison for him. I saw the Ringer NBA. I'm gonna put it on the screen, of course. But I remember they mentioned, and someone else also mentioned the same comparison, which is that he has shades of Marcus Morris. I don't really see that personally.
I don't see it either.
Don't really see it. I'm sorry. Not saying that I know more than Kevin O'Connor. He's been watching the game a lot longer than I, and he gets paid for it, and I do not. So, but I went back, looked at the old Suns tape, compared it to this guy. I see a lot more with this guy. I don't know where I'd put him next year because I don't go that deep. I don't go, looking at kids from high school and come back for multiple reasons. But first of all, I think that he is phenomenal. Really good footwork. Sorry, you were going to say something.
I'm just saying the Morris, whichever Morris twin you want to pick, I find that interesting because like neither one of them were really outstanding athletes. And
that's exactly it. And the thing is like, in terms of the high school thing, it's like, I mean, I did watch, what is his name? The guy from Detroit, the one that I really don't like.
Markieff?
Wiseman.
Wiseman. Oh, okay.
I did watch Wiseman in high school, but in general, like it's like these kids are still growing, right? Like it's like like it's hard to judge someone from high school and then project that forward with Jackson. He has just so, based on the tape that I saw, and this is what I kind of wrote, and just to jump right into the offensive side of the ball, I said he has really good footwork with his creation. It's not just step through moves. I said he can shimmy shake, moves the rock, moves guys out of their socks. I said, he can turn over both shoulders. That was really, because sometimes guys, they'll go over the right, and that's their, like, he can go over both shoulders. He creates space easily in that manner. He has a little bit of that spin move, which is I think why he's garnering the Siakam comparison.
Yep.
There's one thing I say this with OG, because people say, oh, with OG, oh well, he could be number one, number two. The reason why I don't think that he can is because of his fluidity. I think this guy has the fluidity. I really do think that. I think he's light on his feet on the offensive end. We'll get to the defensive end in a second. I think he can catch and shoot in certain spaces. I mean, obviously, college creates certain opportunities and also takes away certain opportunities depending on the coaching system and style. But I think that he doesn't attack closeouts often enough, so that's something that I think that sometimes he falls a little bit in love with his jumper a little bit early. But he has the athleticism that he can, and I think that that's something that can be coached out of him. But the other thing is, again, to talk about him on the offensive end, he can dance, he can salsa, he can move, and we can use that. Like, that's something that with Kawhi. Now Kawhi didn't really dance, but like the way he would move, it was so efficient. And I think that you can, if you have a guy that can really dance and potentially coach him into efficient movement, you have something really special. And I think that he also has a good, he had a good tendency in transition to move the ball and also follow the ball in transition, which is something that
Mhm.
is very useful. So thoughts specifically on his offense, Coach?
Well, I know, like when you look at the numbers for his field goal percentage, I think it's like 38%. And that's not good. I understand that. But a lot of the concerns that I've been seeing have been his shot selection. Well, that can be teachable. I'm not concerned about the shot selection. As long as he is coachable, that can be taught. The I think he shot 67% from the free throw line. That's a concern for this season that he was just in. That's gym time. That's getting with a coach, and you're going to be shooting foul shots all day. He moves that up to 75% by next year, whether he stays in college or not. That's a big, big gap. Like I think he could be an 80% free throw shooter for his career. A lot of the things that I've noticed about him are things that you can teach, are things that come with experience.
Mhm.
The decision making, the shot selection, the free throw shooting, the consistency on his jump shots, when to take them, when not to take them. He's so young. And I think that's what's really intriguing for me is like the guy just turned 18 3 months ago. And,
Yeah.
you know, there's a tremendous, like you said, Kenyon, he could grow, keep growing. You might have like a 6'10 forward,
Mhm.
and everybody wants a 6'10 forward who can score. I don't know too many guys who don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, no. I just to jump on what Coach said, I'll just focus on two items from an attribute standpoint that is positive for that. I think if I think from a Raptors perspective, very good off of screens in this case. So that's something and it can cut, can make plays out of, of screens, which we've talked about in the previous episode. When we have Pirtle now, we're going to be a very heavy screening team. So you got to start looking for
Yep.
guys in this case that can play like that. The other thing in this case too, he seems to have great, he seems to have a great feel for the game and for scoring and as a scorer, which we know in this case, one of the other things we have to do is we have to raise the level of the basketball IQ on this team too.
Yep.
And right now, we just don't have that right now. So if he can address some of that, that would be fantastic. Because right now, that is waning and kind of really muzzling the potential of what this team could be. Because we just don't have enough guys that know, quite honestly, just don't know how to play the game really. Where to be in certain spots and how to move without the ball and all these type of other things that and how to play in this case, even play along star players, whatever the case, or high volume scorers in this case, they don't know how to move without it. It's like, okay, too many times guys be standing out right in the spot where the guy wants to be. It's like, can you get out of the way, please? We saw last night with Scotty and Boucher.
Yeah.
Boucher's like calling for it, like, dude, come on. It's like, right, like these are the things where you have to be instinctually. It's like, okay, this, my teammate has a better matchup here than me in this case here. Let me get out the way. So,
Did you have concerns? Sorry to interrupt, but did you have
no,
concerns with the IQ for him based on his age?
I don't know, because I think one of those things is like one of those things we discussed this before, about like, can you teach basketball IQ, or is it something that's just innate to you?
Yeah.
And I think the way I'm leaning more to the latter, that it's innate. Like I just don't. I think some guys have it, and or some guys just don't have it.
Yes.
Right. So you can marginally get better, and you could coach some of that to some extent. So it's not like it's completely static and that's the way it is. But I think there's also a ceiling of how far you can get in this case compared to a guy that's got it innately. And I think if he has it innately, I think some of those things would make things easier from a coaching standpoint. That you could address really quickly is like, oh, you're not doing this right, and he'll figure it out a lot quicker than say a guy that just doesn't know whatsoever, and and you're in year 3, and you still kind of make the same mistakes.
Right.
I'm not saying anyone in particular. I'm just saying, folks. I just came off the dome.
I just realized what you're. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Not anyone in particular. That's all.
Yeah. So really quickly, just to shift over. So basically, but with Gigi, you're not quite as worried with that side, I guess, with the understanding of the game from an IQ standpoint.
To me,
either of you.
Yeah. I guess that would be something where, like, kind of what Beyond said. Some of it's innate, some of it's experience. If you have the innate, great. Then the experience comes a little bit easier.
Right.
I'm not too concerned about that right now. Now, if he goes back to college next year and he's able to refine that, great. If he goes to the NBA, that I guess might take him a little bit longer, depending on what kind of role he would have on a team and if he'd be playing G League and stuff like that. So I just think with him, it's more experience, more time. It's one of those things that time will tell. He's so young. He's
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to give him almost like the Kuminga treatment, right?
Yep.
But yeah, where you put him, it's like, hey, this is our development plan for you.
That's not a bad comparison, actually. I don't.
Yeah. Do we really have to do that though if you're a Raptors?
Well, yeah, for us, I mean, we might have a space for you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because I'm looking at the kid's skill set right now, and I think if you got 15 minutes on this team right now, I think
that's true. That is true.
You have right now.
That is true.
So, like, and I don't know, like, if you're top 15, 16 pick, those guys tend not to be on the G League. They tend to get minutes.
I mean, I'll put it this way: if he was here for an extended period of time, on, like, let's say, we play on Monday and we don't play till Friday, kind of a thing. Put him on the G League in the in between, get him an extra 20 minutes of time to really, like, test out some stuff. I think that would be interesting. But
I honestly think right now, if he got drafted for the Raptors right now, he could probably be in the 9th dude on this team right now.
Oh, probably, yeah, without question. Which, yeah, jeez,
18 years old.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. The fact that, like, what I was getting at is, I'm not trying to, just for the viewers, I'm not trying to knock him. I'm saying that it's actually something I'm not worried about because he's 18. Right. Like, keep in mind, he's 18. He just left high school.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, these days are all young at this point here. So, like, is it 18? Are you a Sage vet at 19 versus 18 at this point?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Those days are done. Like, it's like, why like Kobe, those guys came in, and some guys were juniors coming out still. Yes, that might have
KG,
been.
yeah.
KG, and even then it wasn't proved because they ended up being some of the smartest guys on their team anyhow. So, like, I just think it's like, yeah, I think that's always a bit overblown by scouts in this case about the age thing. It's like, sometimes it's just like, hey man, either you got it or you don't have it, man. There's guys that we know for a fact that went to school for a couple of years and still can't figure out up this day. They're like 6-7 years in the league, and you're like, yep, there's so and so doing the same thing as they did as always.
Very true. Yeah. Very true.
I do. Mm-hmm. With Gigi as a fit on this team, he's probably not the most ideal fit because we already have like a lot of wing players and stuff like that. So in that case, he's probably not the player. But if you're looking at talent at that 15 range, that might be still on the board. It's hard to pass if you're looking for talent. That is, it's
Well,
hard to pass on him.
once again, because the crossroads this team's at, he might get more opportunity than we think, depending on the situation with certain other players.
Yeah,
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So that might be a necessary thing to have one way or the other, to have that backup in case things change with certain folks' contracts. I just put it that way.
well, but yes, good way to put it.
Yeah, and I think he does enough on the offensive end that it's different. He's different. Like he can, as long as you coach out the attacking closeouts and like don't fall in love with the jumper, I think he is different enough. And even within that, I mean, if he can start hitting mid ranges right away and stuff like that. The other thing too, just to give some context, from what I have read and from what I understand, just as a quick look, that team that he was on didn't have a lot of spacing already. College game is smaller already because of the court itself.
Yeah.
But you add to the fact that with college and his team, they weren't really good at shooting the three, so it was cramped and then cramped again. And so, automatically, I mean, Scotty even mentioned this, right? People thought, oh, he's going to struggle. And like, yes, he did have to work on his scoring and stuff like that. But with that being said, just to jump into his defense, Coach, you were going to say something.
Well, the defense to me, I know the numbers are not great, but I do see defensive upside. No, I don't know if it's like all NBA defense, but I think he could be a pretty good defender, like enough that can get by. He almost averaged a block a game at 17, 18 years old at the college level this year. And I think he basically almost averaged a steal a game as well. So I think there are tools there for him to be a decent defender in the NBA. I think I think too depends on what system that he's in or where he goes to. Um, he'll definitely have to get better at it, but it's just something that's not really a concern of mine right now. Just from some film that I'm literally watching, he's able to stay in front of his man. I think he does better in front of smaller players than he does bigger players because he's thin too, right? He's only a little over 200 pounds, so he might be one of those guys who can switch off on guards, and that's one thing with Scotty and Pascal are pretty good at it, but Gigi might be that type where he might have maybe a bit more better lateral quickness as he gets older too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, because we were talking about the age before, like when it comes to these guys and defensively, especially him being that young, it wasn't like the greatest team too. So I think the players he plays around will help him also too. But the me is that if he has, going back to the IQ element, if he has that already kind of innately, he could pick up on the defensive scheme hopefully a lot quicker in this case and say somewhat struggles, with just basic basketball IQ, and especially if we have the coach that is here now with his defensive schemes, then you better reading your homework in this case here, or you're going to be embarrassed pretty quickly, or embarrassing one of your teammates very fast. so on this with this defense, it's unforgiving. So
Yeah.
I think that's something I think at this point with his age, I'm not that concerned about at the moment. I think as mentioned, the coach when we had a break is that my biggest concern with him right now, the decision making is really, there's two things: the decision making, where the turnover to assist ratio is rough.
It's rough.
It's rough, and
Yeah.
and that concerns me because we got enough one-dimensional guys on this team where that can't make plays. So that makes me a little concerned to add another one like that. And the other thing too is he doesn't finish around the hoop that great. I wanted to make sure we got that in, and that's like a red
Yes.
little flag that is like, oh, we got enough dudes that are bigs that can't finish around the hoop. We got a lot of them too. So I don't want, that's two red flags that make me very nervous compared to some other folks we discussed earlier previously, where I think that we're to see the difference, the separation start coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I just, so I'll just read off my defensive notes about this prospect, about Jackson. So I said, yeah, he's pretty versatile with size, but he struggles with a lot of other things. So that's the first line. I said, screen navigation is meh. I said that he can be a bit of a space cadet off ball, sometimes on both ends of the ball.
Right.
Which is, exactly to your point. I said defensive miscues were common. Again, he's an 18-year-old, so I understand, but I do have to put these things out there to be fair about the process, because I liked a lot of things from him, but these are the things that I did not like. And then I said he could get screened to death. So
We don't have
Yep.
that problem already. So
but I did say he did show flashes of being switchable, being able to defend at least two positions, the 3 and the 4. I said that he's better off getting stuck outside of switching actions for now. So maybe if we, went a little bit more conservative with our defensive scheme, perhaps I think he could be, it wouldn't be a problem on that end of the ball. But I just said there's like you said, the decision making needs a lot of work, and there's one too many positions where he was prone to, this is what I wrote, to what we saw on this team currently. So
it's gonna be fascinating. I mean, I'm not sure this will happen, but if a scenario played out where he's on the board, Hendricks is on the board, Jet Howard's on the board, I'd be curious to see what the Raptors do in that scenario.
Yeah, because it's like,
Yeah.
he gets we talk about guys that play with pace and speed. He's a guy that he gets sped up, and that's very interesting. Coach, you were going to say something.
No, just the area of concern of mine. The biggest concern that I've had with Jackson is the decision making. The defense actually, like, I know he'll get screened to death and stuff like that. That's
Yes.
going to happen in the NBA. But the decision making, that's concerning for sure. I mean, he had 27 assists on the season, under 1 a game. That's not good. That's bad. 86 turnovers. That's not good. But mind you, he was the number 1 option at 17 years old
Yeah.
on a team that actually was supposed to be, South Carolina. They're a decent university team. So I do feel though that these things can be improved upon, like the turnovers and him passing more. I think that can be worked on. The shot selection, that can be worked on. The free throw percentage, that can be worked on. Getting stronger so that he's not shooting under 50% on layups, I think that can be worked on too. He's a bit of a project, but I think he could be worth it for a team, us or somebody else.
And you know what? I think without having, and this is where we have to decide what we want to do in the future. And we don't have the time for this whole discussion, but we don't have a pick next year, so maybe taking someone who is a bit more of a project but with higher upside might be actually worth it, as long as they're actually going to get a proper development, whatever. You don't want them, on the bench and given the treatment that some other players have been given, whether valid or fair or not. I think
He's the type of pick that if we had 2 picks in this draft, I would pick him.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, or you'd pick them with the first one, then you pick someone safer with the second, or
something like that. Yeah, whatever combo you want to go with. But I like as the only pick in the draft, considering where we're at and their depth issues, that one, it will be fascinating to see how much of a live they want to take that chance. Like to me, for example, if he got picked by the Pelicans, for example, I think that would make sense.
Yeah, because they have enough guys that are much more polished at that similar type of thing. Although they need defense, and they need shooting, and he doesn't really, so far hasn't shown flashes of either. But like what he could become in like 2-3 years is very, very, very intriguing. And I mean, either way, I think what's exciting, just to kind of go towards the close of this conversation, is, we've been lacking a lot of first round picks. I think one of the first ones that we had, a proper first round pick that we had in a long time, was a certain Mr. Barnes. I guess, yes, there was Flynn before that, but I'm talking about guys that are a little bit further up and better picks in terms of position within the draft. And so I think with that being said, I feel like he is one of the better prospects. He's very intriguing. Who knows if we get a second pick, then maybe that happens. I do think that there is a chance that we do get a second pick.
Mhm.
Um, and I do understand why he has kind of floated between, I've seen as low as like 17, and I've seen as high as like 5 at times.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Closing thoughts.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think overall he's a high risk, high reward type of player at this point. And I think you could take. I'm gonna say that flyer is a bit derogatory. I don't know if but I think if you're in the right position, you're in your team. He's worthwhile to pick in this case here. Is he the right player at this moment in the Raptors' journey at the moment? I am skeptical about that at this point here. I think they need someone that can really impact them like next year, right then and there. I don't think waiting a year or two or something like that with this team, considering who might still be on this team, is really what you want to be doing. That's just my instinct of it. It doesn't mean I don't think he get drafted. I think there's teams all around us, that even Atlanta, I could see picking him in this case, for example. Like, there's teams I could see picking him, and he's the right pick for that team. But I'm not sure if he's actually the right pick based on the type of roster the Raptors have and where they are in their development.
Yeah. I mean, for every guy with to counter the we got to pick the highest upside guy. That doesn't always upside doesn't always mean he's the best player available. I
Right.
mean,
Mhm.
Bruno Caboclo, I'm not comparing him to Bruno at all.
Right.
But good example where it's like, oh well, if this dude got everything together, or some of these other guys where it's like if he got everything together, he could be the next XYZ. Sometimes it takes guys. Jalen. Jalen Johnson is another example where he's finally now coming on, and he was a guy that was highly touted, really young in his draft. I don't know if was that. I think that was that last year or Scotty Barnes draft. Jalen Johnson. Do you guys remember?
I can't remember.
He's
Scotty
on the
draft.
okay.
Scotty's
So
draft?
yeah, and I think he's
Yeah.
on the Hawks now. But yeah,
Yeah.
and so now he's finally showing like signs, but even then it's still signs. So
Fine.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we will see. Oh yeah,
Just one last thing on that point is that also with the Raptors, they're in such a delicate situation with their talent that if you need someone to play with Sky, and to your point, this is the next best pick they might get for a while, as long as Siakam's on the team.
yep,
So
yes, exactly.
right, you can't kind of mess this pick up and not have another running mate with Scotty for the future. At this point. So like to me, I think that's why this pick you got to get someone's like boom, he's hitting the ground running the moment he gets in.
Yeah,
So,
and ready to work with Scotty instead of like kind of a little bit behind
right.
and that sort of thing. Coach, any last thoughts?
I think Jackson's talent's very intriguing. And I hear what you guys are saying. Like, is he the best fit for this team right now? He's probably not. He's probably a couple of years away. Um, Before we got Hurdle, we were 6 games below 500. We are now about a 500 team with him. And I still think the talent level of this team is not nowhere near close to where it should be or where it has to go to be top three.
Yep.
Um, Jackson might be a swing for the fence pick. And I think if we were to get a second pick in this draft, man, I think you got to go with this kid for sure. He's raw. Don't get me wrong. He's raw, but he's got some things that it's just you can't teach. He was the best high school player in the U.S. last year as a 16, 17-year-old. He could go number one next year in the 2024 draft if he decided to stay. And like kind of like Beyond said, this is our last year having a decent pick for at least 2 years from now. And if they're looking for high upside talent around 15, this would be your guy. If they're looking for fit, this might not be your guy. If they're looking at Siakam and Scotty for next year, this may not so sure if this is your guy. But if they're looking long term past Siakam and they're looking more Scotty and this kid, this could be your guy.
Fair enough. Well, so with that being said, um, I'm going to kind of go to the very end of this conversation and just say thank you very much for both of you for your time talking about these two prospects that we've talked about whenever each individual thing comes out. And either way, I did just enjoy these conversations. Hopefully I will get the big boards out closer to the draft and all that kind of stuff, but it's always great to talk to you guys. Hopefully the Raptors figure that stuff out where they're at. I think because of the timing right now, there was one thing we wanted to talk about. What we might just talk about it another day in terms of the CBA, but there is a new CBA. Does have some implications. We'll talk about it another day. And with that being said, again, if you have prospects you want to that you think that would be great within the Raptors range, please um, keep that in mind. So if you have some prospects that you want to cover, definitely like, comment, and subscribe, and leave that information down below, and we'll try to get back to it. I try to get to every single comment. I mean, I'm not one of those channels with like 1,000 comments, so I will try to get to as many comments as I can, and as quickly as I can. So that with that being said, thanks for having me, and everyone take care.